It's a unicorn. Well, I mean, I am going to talk about the last unicorn, so I figured I should have a unicorn somewhere nearby. I've had this for a long time. I do not remember exactly how long I've had her, but I've had her for quite a while. I made her at one of the Build-A-Bears. I don't remember if it was the one in Disney World or Disneyland, or if it was the one in Mall of America, maybe. I don't remember. Something like that. One of the Build-A-Bears. I still have it. I also have this pretty little unicorn, who I cannot remember if I've shown before, but I have a pretty little unicorn here as well. Slightly more delicate one, so I'm a little more careful with it. So, let's talk about the last unicorn. Okay, so the movie for the last unicorn came out in 1982, and it is based off of a fantasy novel of the same name by Peter S. Beagle, and it was published in 1968. So it took about 14 years for it to be made into a movie. I would assume it was a successful enough book if they wanted to try to turn it into a movie, so, that's good. And I've never read the book, but I love the movie. I will make a note here, in regards to someone else who did a very, very good discussion about the book and in reference to the film. There is a YouTuber I watch. Her name is Rowe, and I will put a link in the description to her site, to the specific video for where she discusses the history of unicorns and then the last unicorn in regards to mostly more about the book, but she does reference some of the movie to a degree. So I will put that there in the description if you want kind of a more in-depth discussion in that regard, but this is just my opinions in regards to the movie. This movie has a very good cast list, which I'll get to at the end. So, into the movie, we just kind of get the start where we see this beautiful forest and we see these two hunters out riding in the forest. And they're searching for game, and of course they cannot find any game. And they just kind of come to the conclusion that, oh, this must be a magical forest, and that means that there is a unicorn that resides here. And because there is a unicorn that resides here, that means that some of the animals sometimes learn a little bit of magic on their own. One hunter is skeptical. The other one's like, no, think about it. This place, the leaves never fall. There's never snow. The seasons never change. We never find any game here, even though we know there's animals here. That means there's a unicorn here. And they're like, unicorns are something of fairy tale. And I'm like, okay, sure, we can go with that. And so there's that whole discussion. And they're like, well, I've never seen a unicorn. And even if we did, we may never know that that's what we're looking at. And there's this concept or this thought that they're like, well, if there is a unicorn here, they must be the last unicorn because there's no more tales of unicorns or sightings of unicorns living anywhere else in the world. And they leave the forest, and then we are introduced to this beautiful white unicorn. And she technically gets a name later on, but for the time being, I'm just going to refer to her as the unicorn because that is what she is here. And she is like, silly humans, of course unicorns exist. We cannot die. We are immortal. She's like, yes, we can be hunted and trapped and killed, but we cannot just vanish or die. And even then, men may never know that that is what they are looking at. For if they have lost belief in magic and in unicorns, then they would never know if they are looking at a unicorn or not. And then, so she's just kind of like, the unicorn is like the protector of her forest. And then, of course, we introduced just this very erratic butterfly who shows up. Very erratic. And So the gag with the butterfly is that he speaks in not like riddles but like poems and song lyrics and things like that he's heard, and he is just going all over the place in regards to like references and everything like that, in regards to like one lines from songs and things like that, and just like bopping all over the place around the unicorn. And she's trying to get from the butterfly because he's, traveled. Have you seen any other creatures like me? Have you seen anyone else that looks like me? And the butterfly is not giving her any form of a straight answer, which is just funny. She's just like, woe is me to expect a straight answer from you. Butterflies only talk in riddles and songs. And then the butterfly says, a unicorn, and like kind of like the textbook definition of a unicorn, basically. Una, one, corn, horn, unicorn, all of that stuff. Mythical creatures, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, you do know who I am. And he's like, I guess he's kind of like, I guess I do know what you are. And she's like, but have you seen any others? And he's like, no. And basically what ends up happening is he ends up saying something about that there is this red bull who, like, had this red bull, not the kind that gives you wings, although I did have to look up for when that initially came out. And that was like 1987, I think. So it was like a while after this movie came out and a while after the book came out. So if anyone has a copyright claim, it's the book and the movie over the red bull, but whatever. I was just like, I have to look that up. And he's like, the Red Bull chased the unicorns and covered their tracks long ago, bringing them down all the roads and trapping them. And you are the last one. And the unicorn decides that she is going to leave her forest. And she's like, well, she had mentioned that like, and unicorns can even be killed if they leave their forest, but I guess within their forest, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily invincible, but they're probably a lot safer if they just remain in their forest. So the unicorn decides that she is going to leave. And she heads off on this journey. And she starts, it's a very long journey. She travels hundreds and hundreds of miles through the seasons and everything like that. And eventually, there's like farmers and stuff that see her, but all they see of her is just this beautiful white mare. They don't see that she is a unicorn because they're not expecting to see a unicorn. That's not something that they believe in. For them, that's just, fairy tales and children's stories and things for idiots to believe in and stuff like that. And so she continues to travel, and one night she falls asleep on the edge of the road, and she is found by this traveling sideshow caravan that is led by this woman, this witch named Mummy Fortuna. And Mummy Fortuna recognizes what she is because she's a witch and she can tell, oh, this is a unicorn. And then she like brings over her two like assistants, Rowe or whatever, who is just this little, I don't know how to describe him. He's like a hunchback, I guess would be a way of putting it. And he's kind of an idiot. And she's like, well, what do you see? And he's like, I just see a horse. And then she brings over her magician, Schmendrick. And she's like, what do you see, magician? And he's like, I just see a white mare. For clarification, he can see that she is a real unicorn. He can tell that she is a real unicorn because he can see her horn. So Mummy Fortuna ends up putting this kind of sleeping spell on the unicorn along with giving her this fake horn. So that way people can actually see it and can see that she's a unicorn. And they lock her up in a cage overnight, and then the next morning, we see that the caravan is set up, and there's all these like nearby villagers that have shown up, and they're like, oh, let's go see, all these oddities and everything like that. And like the tagline of this is, creatures of night brought to light. So, we have the Runek or whatever his name is going around and like showing off all these creatures in these cages and everything. And it was like, this is a dragon. It speaks 17 languages. Its skin is so cold that it burns. And this is a manticore, head of a lion, but, blah, 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 tail of a scorpion, all of that stuff. This is, the Midgard serpent. This is, blah, 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 blah. Just like all this other stuff. All these fantastical creatures. And the unicorn, Schmendrick walks over to the unicorn and is like, okay, so, my name's Schmendrick. Not quite like that, but he's like, Schmendrick is with you and I can tell that you're real and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, look around at your fellow legendaries. And she does. And she's like, she can tell instantly that, the dragon's not a dragon. The manticore is a toothless lion. The Midgard serpent is just a snake. The Minotaur or whatever it was is, it's a monkey with a hurt foot. And, everything's fake. It's all these little illusion magics that Mummy Fortuna has done. And she looks over at another cage and she goes, all of them are fake, except that one. That is the harpy, Kaleo, who's very real, very immortal, and very, very angry at Mummy Fortuna for the fact that she captured her and keeps her in a cage. And I would be too if I was an immortal being that had been trapped in a cage by a witch. And Schmendrick explains that Mummy Fortuna's magic is designed to be false. It's designed to create illusion. She can't really turn one thing into another. She can just make an illusion. She put a fake horn on a unicorn. She has these other regular animals look like they are these fantastical creatures, but the harpy is real and the unicorn is real, and messing with the real and the actual weakens Mummy Fortuna's magic. And so there's that whole bit there. And Schmendrick tells her that, I'll work on trying to find a way to free you. And we have this moment where, like, the people, the gawkers at the show, at the, the villagers that have come out to look, come over and they're looking at the unicorn and they're just in awe of her, because it's like, that would be, yeah, I can't really blame them. They're just, like, in awe of her at that point. And, like, having these very emotional reactions to the fact that they are seeing this, what they believe, and what actually is a unicorn. And we cut to that night, and Schmendrick shows up, and he's just like, okay, well, he tries to use his own magic, and, like, he makes an illusion around the cage, and then he tries something to try to make the bars brittle, but they just electrocute him instead. He tries something where he tries to make the cage, like, expand, so she can, like, try to get out through the bars. That doesn't work. And he's just like, I was trying to hope I'd be able to help you with that, but I guess you'll just have to settle for a second-rate pickpocket, and pulls out the keys that he stole from the other guy, and he, like, lets her out. And at that point, Mummy Fortuna arrives, as does Rurik. The other guys show up, and Rurik and Schmendrick start fighting. And the unicorn runs around, and she, like, opens all the other cages. And then she makes her way over to the harpy's cage and frees the harpy as well. And that basically results in, first the harpy tries to attack the unicorn, but then sees Mummy Fortuna and goes after Mummy Fortuna. Also, Mummy Fortuna had talked to the unicorn at one point and is just like, and the unicorn's trying to convince her to just, let me and let the harpy go. We're real. We don't belong in your collection. Let us go. And Mummy Fortuna is just like, someday she will kill me, in regards to the harpy. And she's like, she'll kill me, but she will live forever. And in her mind, because of the fact that I trapped her, I caged her, I held her, that will be my immortality. I tamed her. That type of thing. And Mummy Fortuna is nuts. Very nuts. And what ends up happening is, of course, that then, as I said, that night, blah, 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 blah. Everything, the harpy gets out and then ends up attacking Mummy Fortuna and then attacks the other guy. And this ends up, as they're leaving, Schmendrick is like, well, we have to run. And the unicorn was like, no, you must never run from anything that is immortal. It will draw their attention. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. the unicorn also got a little bit of information about the Red Bull, stating that it belongs to a man named King Haggard, and that he lives in this very distant and shrouded kingdom that, shrouded in mystery and everything like that. And that many fear him and the Red Bull. So she's like gathering some information there. Schmendrick and the unicorn then continue to travel together because like she kind of owes him her life. And he's like, well, let me travel with you. And she's like, okay, fine. And they travel. And from there, eventually they find their way into this forest where they end up having to deal with Captain Cully and his surly maid wife, Molly Grew. And basically, and he's supposed to be like this, like very disheveled, very downtrodden Robin Hood type figure. Although he's much more of a bandit as opposed to stealing from the rich to give to the poor. He's like, steal from whoever the heck comes by and I'll take it and make it mine and type of thing. There's a lot of great one-liners in this. One of the one-liners that pops up in this bit when we're having like a bunch of Captain Cully's men sitting around the fire and they're all complaining about the rat soup. And they're like, the least she could do is use a different rat. And I'm like, ew. No. Gross. I would leave. And Schmendrick unfortunately ends up getting captured and taken to, the main camp. And he tries to charm Captain Cully and Molly Grew and everything like that. Schmendrick's a good con man. He is a wizard, but he's a good con man. And is, using the snippets of information he's grabbed to try to butter everybody up. And basically what ends up happening is, like, Molly Grew is very much more of this, like, dreamer type of a thing, believes in fairy tales and stuff like that, believes in the concept of Robin Hood and everything like that. And Captain Cully is like, no, Robin Hood's a myth. We are the real thing, blah, 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 blah. And what ends up happening is, the unicorn has, like, found her way to the camp, and, like, Schmendrick sees her, so he's like, okay, well, I need to come up with, like, some type of a distraction so I can escape. And he activates, his magic and chants, and it ends up making this illusion of Robin Hood and Maid Marian and, like, Friar Tuck and, like, all these other characters that are, part of the Robin Hood legend come to, seem like they are coming to life, but they're kind of like ghosts in the fact that they're, like, people can walk right through them. They walk right through the fire, blah, 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 blah. My Disney brain is blanking on me for when the Disney version of Robin Hood came out with all the animal ones, but I'm like, I'd be okay if that was a slight nod. If, like, this scene here is a slight nod to that, I'd be fine with that. I don't think it is, but, like, I would be fine if it was. I mean, like, Robin Hood's a very popular character in that regard, so, one way or the other. But what's happening is, like, Molly Grew, along with all of the other, most of Captain Cully's men just, like, chase after the illusions, and Schmendrick kind of falls unconscious, and Captain Cully, along with one of his men, grab Schmendrick, and they're like, okay, he's gonna be useful, we're gonna hold on to him, and then we're gonna take him, and we're gonna sell him in the morning, and they tie him to this tree. And Schmendrick, in this desperate attempt to try to escape, just releases his magic, and it brings the tree to life, which is just, oh god. The tree comes to life and just, like, instantly falls in love with Schmendrick, because reasons, and she's just, like, nearly smothering him, for obvious reasons, and she's just, I'll remember everything about you when everyone else is dead and gone, and there is no love like the love of a tree. And I'm like, is this a Giving Tree joke? Reference? Something? Maybe? I don't know. I don't know when the Giving Tree came out. And what ends up happening is the unicorn makes her way over and frees Schmendrick by, like, cutting the ropes, and, like, that turns the tree back to normal. And he's like, I was almost engaged to a Douglas fir. Please get me out of here. There's lots of inconsistent references to this, because, like, the butterfly earlier on makes a reference to, like, the A train, and I'm like, did not exist in medieval Europe. Neither did Douglas firs. It's like, you're getting your stuff mixed and matched here, but whatever. I also learned in the process of this that one of the companies that helped make this movie was Rankin and Bass, who of course did so many of the different Rudolph and Santa Claus and Frosty and stuff like that. So many of those animations and stop motion animation and stuff like that. So I like that kind of through line there. In that regard for like other things that they made that I love watching. And what ends up happening is Schmendrick and the unicorn get ready to leave, and then Molly shows back up again, and she recognizes that this is a unicorn, that the unicorn is a real unicorn. And she comes over and she just like starts cursing at the unicorn. Well, not actually cursing, but like, why did you come now? Why did you come now when I'm an old woman as opposed to when I was young and pure and innocent and beautiful, blah, 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 just like angry at the unicorn, which is like, I mean, that is kind of like this valid moment of like, girls who are like, why didn't my fairy godmother show up when I needed her? Why didn't this, blah, 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 show, like, where's my Hogwarts letter? Where's my journey with Gandalf type of thing? It's that kind of concept of like this wonderful thing that I've read about in stories and heard so many times and everything like that. It's like, it never came for me. Why didn't it ever come with me? Type of thing. And that's like Molly's, gripe here. And it's a valid gripe in my opinion. And, so that happens. And then she's just like, okay, I'm coming, like, she forgives the unicorn, and she's like, but it's okay, I forgive you. And then Molly joins the group, and Schmendrick does not approve of this, and he tries to, like, scare her off. And she's just like, yeah, no, you're not scary, and they just travel on. And she's like, besides, if you're trying to find your way to King Hagar and the Red Bull, you're going the wrong way. And then she starts leading them in the correct path. Eventually, they do find their way to the outskirts of Haggard's land, and then further until they reach what would basically end up being like the road near the castle, and they see the castle in the distance. And they make camp for the night, and that night, they are suddenly attacked by the Red Bull, who ignores Schmendrick and Molly and starts chasing after the unicorn. Schmendrick, in an attempt to try to protect the unicorn, uses just this huge amount of magic and ends up transforming the unicorn into a human girl. And the unicorn and the Red Bull has wants nothing to do with her and like walks off and leaves. And Molly is just like, you're an idiot. You turned her into a human. She'll go mad in this form. She's not supposed to be in this form. Her mind is not designed. Her magic and her mind, you're not designed to be in a human form. She's an immortal being that you just put inside of a mortal body, a mortal cage. And the unicorn is just like this. I feel like this body is dying all around me, type of a thing. And I mean, for a being of immortality, yes, that makes sense. And she's like, I am more terrified of this body than I ever was of the Red Bull. But it's like, okay, well, we found our way to Haggard's castle. And the next morning, they make their way up to Haggard's castle, where they are kind of welcomed in isn't necessarily the best way of putting it, but they're met by two guards who then lead them into the castle. Schmendrick is like, I am Schmendrick the Magnificent, and this is my assistant Molly and the Lady Amalthea. And I'm like, first of all, the Lady Amalthea is only wearing your cloak, so you're kind of the lady concept is a little bit out the window right now. What's your backstory going to be? That you guys were mugged on the way here? And they took everything, including the clothes that she had on her back. Robbers have done worse. So that would probably be a valid argument there. But what ends up happening is, they're taken into the castle, and they are. It's revealed that the two guards are actually Haggard, and then his son, Prince Lear, and they're like, well, why are you here? And they're like, well, we've came to serve at your court. And, Schmendrick is doing his, trying to butter everybody up and everything like that. We've come to serve at your court and everything like that. And Hagar basically has this concept of like, I keep nothing around me that I do not find any interest in, that I hold no care for, that does not bring me happiness. So why should I allow you to stay here? And Molly is like, well, clearly your current court magician does not bring you happiness. So why not try Schmendrick? And Hagar is like, it's kind of like, he's like, okay, I'll go with this. And he summons his magician, Mabrook, who just shows up, laughs at Haggard, takes a glance at Amalthea, figures out very quickly what she is, I believe. And then is like, why did you summon me, my lord? And he's like, I'm firing you and I'm hiring this dolt as my new magician. And and so just Mabrook is just like, okay. And he tries using his magic to, like, scare everybody, but just, like, Amalthea comes over and, like, intimidates him, and he's like, fine, I'll leave. And he leaves. And Prince Lear was ready to, like, take him off, and he's like, come on, old man, I'll write you a reference. I'm like, a reference? This is the medieval times. Why would he need a reference? He's a wizard. I love the one-liners in this movie. They're great. There's also music in this movie at points. There's like a song at the beginning of the movie that's like, I think it's just called The Last Unicorn or whatever, that like goes over and talks, is like talking about, unicorns and blah, 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 blah. That gets, I think, some reprises throughout the movie. And that's a good song. And there's a couple of other good songs that come up in a little bit. And one of the, so Schmendrick is now hired on as a magician. Molly is going to work in the kitchen. And then, like, Amalthea, I guess, just gets to live in the castle. I guess they make the guise is that Schmendrick is her uncle or something like that. So it's like that's why they're with each other. I guess why they're around each other. And there's this moment where Hagar, like, looks at Amalthea, and he, like, looks into her eyes, and he's like, why can I not see myself in your eyes? And, is, like, befuddled by her. And then we just get, like, this, like, I guess they're in the castle for quite a while, because we get, like, these little bits of time skip where, Lear is clearly falling in love with Amalthea. Schmendrick is trying to find out any information he can about how to get to the Red Bull. And while doing so, he's having to pretend to be like the court fool to keep, Haggard interested and not paying attention to Amalthea. And Molly's, in the kitchen cooking and everything like that. And her and Prince Lear is like, he does not act high and mighty or anything along those lines. He's a very nice, young man. And we have these moments where, like, we have this time where he, like, rides off. And, he slays this dragon that showed up from the east somewhere, I guess, because it's like the big, serpentine type Shenron looking dragon, type of thing. And he slays that, and he brings its head to Amalthea and tries to impress her, and she's just like, has nothing to do with him. And so he goes and complains to Molly, and he's like, I brought her the head, and she looked at me like that, and I was sorry I killed the dang thing and everything. And like there's like a little song in there, and like Lear is just clearly already head over heels for Amalthea at this point in time, so there's like a bunch of that stuff going on, and he's just trying to find ways to win her heart. And he does, like, I've done so many of these different, fantastical heroic things. It's like in the stories and legends, and yet she won't pay any attention to me, or she barely gives me the time of day and all of that stuff. And so we're getting a bunch of that stuff, and there ends up being, Molly goes and talks to Amalthea, and Amalthea is having trouble trying to remember why they're in this castle in the first place, who she is to begin with. And it's this concept of, like, she's slowly becoming less and less of a unicorn inside of a woman's body, and more of a human inside of a human body. And so she keeps having these, like, lapses in memory and stuff like that, because, this body is not designed to contain this, immortal spirit, this immortal soul of an immortal being type of a thing. And has, like, magic and everything like that. So she's, having a problem with that. And, Molly tries to, tell her just, be kind to Lear and blah, 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 blah. And we have this, we have these scenes where, Lear is trying to, court her, and the two of them actually seem to actually be falling for each other. There's also this other bit where we see all of this different artwork around the palace that is like all of these beautiful portraits and carvings of like unicorns, and Amalthea keeps standing in front of them and everything like that. Is, are you getting the reference? Are you getting the reference? Are you getting the reference? She's a unicorn. It's like, we know that. We saw her turn into the human. We've been paying attention. And, so we see all this artwork in the castle. That's just gorgeous artwork. And also, like, the opening credits for this movie are just, like, beautiful things that are based off of, like, tapestries of unicorns. That I love those pictures that they use there for those references. And I think a lot of these are based off of, like, other sculptures or portraits or tapestries or something like that of, like, unicorns that existed in our world, of our beautiful art pieces that existed in our world. And what ends up happening is, as all of this is taking place, Schmendrick is, still trying to gather any information he can. And it ends up being Molly that actually gets the information. And she gets her information from this weird cat that A, has an eye patch, B, has a peg leg, and C, talks like a pirate, and in riddles. And I'm like, damn it, cat. And like, so Molly gets gets kind of a clue or a riddle from the cat that's like, I don't remember what the clue is. It's like, when the wine drinks itself, when the skull speaks, when the clock strikes the right time, only then will you find the tunnel that leads to the Red Bull. There's a trick of it, of course. And he like makes this other comment because Molly's just like, why can't you just give me a straight answer? And he's like, I be what I be, and I be a cat. And when has any cat ever given anyone a straight answer? And I'm like, are you based off the Cheshire Cat too? You talk. How do you talk? I get that Amalthea, or that, like as the unicorn, that she could talk to the butterfly and talk to other animals and everything like that. But it's just like, why can you specifically talk, cat? Why? Never explained. But the cat's funny. And then there is a scene where Haggard seems to be trying to figure out what Amalthea is, and he seems to be, he's pretty close. He's figured out that she's not quite normal. And like, he ends up explaining to her that, that Lear was actually adopted. And, he's like, why have you come to my castle to steal something from me? And she's like, I want nothing that is yours, and all this other stuff. And there's this moment where, like, he tries to, like, he gets very close to her and, like, looks in her eyes again, but, like, now they're just reflecting him, not, like, her forest, or not, like, anything else like they were before. It's just reflecting him, and he's just, like, her eyes have gone dull type of a thing. And there's this moment where he like brings her over to like the side of the castle, which is like overlooking this coastline, overlooking like the ocean. And he has her like looking into the water, and he's like, I like to watch them. They fill me with joy. The first I felt it, I thought I was going to die. I said to the Red Bull, I must have them, all there are. For nothing makes me happy but their shining in their grace. So the Red Bull caught them. Each time I see the unicorns, my unicorns, it is like the morning in the woods, and I am young in spirit, in spite of myself. And he's just like, so he's basically explaining, okay, I saw a unicorn one point when I was a kid, and because of this joy they gave me, I then had this, somehow, I don't know if he made like a deal with the bull or what, but made the bull run around the world and gather up all of the unicorns and bring them back here to Haggard's castle, either one at a time or in groups or whatever, and bring them back to Haggard's castle. And the bull sleeps beneath the castle, and he ran all of the unicorns into the waves, and now they are trapped in the waves, and they are like trapped in the ocean. And I guess only Haggard can see them. Although Lear makes a mention later that he had kept having dreams about unicorns when he was growing up. And so, so that all happens. And like, Molly and, Schmendrick are realizing that they're losing time because Amalthea is like losing her memory and everything like that and becoming more and more human. So they're like, okay, they work on trying to figure out, with the cat's riddle and everything like that. They're like, okay, well, we have an idea of where we need to go. And they find this old ancient broken clock, and they find this skeleton that is just like, for some reason, just up on this mantelpiece or whatever by a fireplace or whatever, or column or whatever it is. And they end up talking to the skeleton. Skeleton can talk. No explanation. Magic. Magic is the explanation. That's all we get. And the skeleton can talk, and the skeleton is just like, no, I won't help you because I don't feel like it. And they're just like, well, we have to find a way to get to the Red Bull. And basically what ends up happening is Schmendrick and Molly trick the skeleton because, in regards to like, and the wine drinks itself is like part of the riddle. So what happens is like Molly gives Schmendrick like this thing of water, and he like pretends to do magic on it to try to turn it into wine. And then he just like drinks it all, and then like he pretends that it's wine, and they trick the skeleton because the skeleton is like so desperate that it wants wine, that the skeleton just wants wine so bad that it's just like, I'll tell you anything, just give me the wine. And they're like, tell us how to get to the Red Bull. And he's like, see the clock over there, you walk through the clock and you will find your way down to the Red Bull. It's like, when it strikes a certain time, no, just go through it. You have to walk through time. It's a clock. Just walk through it. Now give me the effing wine. They check the skeleton and they give him the wine. It's just like an empty bottle. And he's drinking it and he's getting drunk. And he starts to get drunk. And then he's like, oh yeah, the wine. I'm just like, calm down, dude. And, so they start heading their way over to the clock, and they're getting ready to head down. But the skeleton realizes that Amalthea is a unicorn, and he cries out to Haggard, who then shows up, and they, Molly and Amalthea rush through into the clock as Schmendrick starts trying to fight Haggard and to protect them and give them time. And Lear has managed to make his way in there as well. And he's just like, what was there to figure out? I followed her into the clock while you were fighting my dad, type of a thing. And so we have that moment. And they're just like, okay, what the F is going on here? In regards to, Schmendrick manages to get away. And Haggard just like destroys the clock with all of them inside of it. So they're trapped down in the Red Bull's cave. And they start making their way down through to where the Red Bull's cave is. And as they're going, Schmendrick is explaining their plight to Lear. And Lear is just like, unicorn, mermaid, whatever you want to tell me she was, I don't care. I love whom I love. In regards to the fact that he loves Amalthea. And, there's this moment where Amalthea... And I love that they have this in there because it is, like in so many different fairy tales, it would be, like in The Little Mermaid, it's, she wants to become a human, she wants to stay and all that stuff. There's other times where like a person gets transformed into an animal or an animal gets transformed into a person and they have to break the spell or whatever. Shrek, for a reference there for Fiona and all of that stuff. But what ends up happening is Amalthea is inspired by Lear's words and his claims for his love for her. And she just says that she just wants to remain a human so she can be with him and die with him. And, but Lear is the one that objects to this. And he's like, no, as a hero, which is what he has, grown and trained himself to be, is a hero. He's like, no, I know that this is not, that he knows when things should happen, and what should happen is that Amalthea needs to continue on her quest, and she needs to save the other unicorns. And even if it means that she must become one again, and therefore unable to return Lear's love, because as a human at the moment, she can love him. And like it stated earlier in the movie that like unicorns cannot regret, they can feel sadness, but they can't regret something. They can be, they can feel happiness, but they can't really feel love, because that's not really like something that's like within their wheelhouse in regards to this definition of unicorns in this world. And so like that's kind of referenced there. And even Schmendrick is just kind of like, before Lear speaks up, Schmendrick is like, fine, marry the prince. Go off, marry the prince, and live together happily and have your happy ending. Remain a human, blah, 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 blah. Let all the other unicorns stay captured by Haggard and in their kind of eternal prison because of the Red Bull and Haggard. And yeah, Lear is like, no, you have to keep going. And at that point, that's when the Red Bull appears, recognizes Amalthea for what she really is, and ends up, trying to chase her. Lear tries to fight back to protect her. And in the process, Schmendrick, unable to do anything, he ends up gathering up his magic and returns Amalthea to her true form. Returns her to her unicorn form, and she leads the Red Bull out of the cave, and with Schmendrick and Molly and Lear following her, and and they all make their way out, and they watch as like the unicorn is being backed into the ocean, but she then Lear is looking at Schmendrick and is like, can't you do something to help her? And Schmendrick says something along the lines of like, I have done all of that I can for her, but right now, like in this time, she needs a hero. And that's where, Lear steps forward and tries to attack the bull, but he ends up getting trampled instead. And this causes the unicorn to then fight back. She starts, her horn glows, and she starts like jabbing at the Red Bull with it and makes him back into the waves. And we see the waves come forward, and the foam on the waves forms into these other unicorns, these hundreds of unicorns that have been trapped there by the Red Bull and Hagar for however long. And they start running toward the beach, and the bull is like pushed into the waves and supposedly, I guess, smothered or something. And the other unicorns run across the beach and run back to freedom and run around, run up the coast and up through the path by Hagar's castle, causing this like earthquake to happen in his rickety old frickin' castle to start crumbling as he shouts from like the top of the castle, I knew you were the last, and like falls into the ocean and dies. Hagar has been unalived, however you want to put it. And the unicorn then returns to where Molly and Schmendrick are, and she revives Lear, and she like seems to be saying her farewells, and she leaves, and Lear wakes up, and he like, sees her one last time as she, rides off. And he's just very sad because like he did truly love her. And what ends up happening is, the trio are like, okay, well, we're all going to go, we're going to go our separate ways. Lear says his goodbye to Molly and Schmendrick, saying that he's happy that he has friends, and of course that they'll come back at some point in time. And he's like, he makes a comment that like, but he will always, love Amalthea and miss her. And Schmendrick makes a comment of, she will remember your heart when men are fairy tales and books written by rabbits. Of all the unicorns, she is the only one who knows what regret is. And love. And, so Lear is kind of like, yeah, yeah, kind of like, that is true. And so then Lear heads off, and then like Molly and Schmendrick stay together, and they go off. And like the next evening, the unicorn shows up at Schmendrick and Molly's camp and says thanks one last time. And she explains that that she is the first unicorn ever to feel the sting of immortality and also the pain of regret, and that both of those she thanks Schmendrick for, because now she is a unicorn that knows what it really means to live. And, at this point, Schmendrick has kind of, made his way into being a great magician as what he wanted to, always wanted to be. And kind of like the quote here that I have is, the unicorn is just like, "You are a true wizard now, as you always wished. Does it make you happy?" And Schmendrick says, well, men don't always know when they're happy, but I think so. And you?" And the unicorn says, "I'm a little afraid to go home. I have been mortal, and some part of me is mortal yet. I am no longer like the others, for no unicorn ever was born who could regret. But now I do. I regret." And Schmendrick goes, "I am sorry. I have done you evil, and I cannot undo it." And she goes, "No, unicorns are in the world again. No sorrow will live in me with that joy, save one, and I thank you for that part too. Farewell, good magician. I will try to go home." And she rides off, and Molly wakes up and she watches with Schmendrick as the unicorn rides off and is heading back to her forest. And like in the end credits, we see that she returns to her forest and everything. I mean, I love the movie. What can I say? They do a very good job with it. There's like good little musical scenes in it. Like there's like a song that's sung between like Lear and Amalthea, where we see them falling in love, and so we have nice good things like that. The animation in this is beautiful, all of that. Going into the main cast of the movie, so we have Mia Farrow as the unicorn / Lady Amalthea. We have Alan Arkin, who I believe passed away recently, but I don't remember exactly, as Schmendrick the magician. We have Jeff Bridges as Prince Lear. We have Tammy Grimes, blanking on who she is, as Molly Grew. We have Angela Lansbury, may she rest in peace, as Mummy Fortuna. And we have Christopher Lee as King Hagar. Again, may he rest in peace. Several people from this movie are dead. Oh well. To be fair, this is a 40-year-old movie. Or almost 40-year-old movie. 42-year-old movie at this point in time. So, yeah. It's an old movie. Well, I mean, it's not an old movie, but it's old enough that, like, yeah, that makes sense. And I just love this movie. It's just such, I don't know. It's one of my favorite ones that are part of like the non-Disney ones. As I said, I will put a link in the description below in regards to Kaz Rowe, who did a very good description or a very good discussion on unicorns themselves, and then also on The Last Unicorn. In the description below, I'll put a link there to that video from her. I have no association with her, and I don't know, she has no idea who I am, but I just figured it was a very good discussion of, this book and of this topic, so I figured I'd put it in here as well, since it's one that I really liked. So, that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!